They love you here.
Wow.
They love you here. Blake, congratulations.
I feel like I'm home.
You're home. This is.
What if the greatest love story in Hollywood wasn't born on a red carpet, but in the wreckage of heartbreak? One was a country rebel grieving in silence. The other, a pop icon rebuilding herself after public betrayal. No one saw it coming. Blake Shelton, born in 1976 in Ada, Oklahoma, was surrounded by music from a young age, taking up the guitar under the guidance of his uncle by age 12. His early life was marked by tragedy when his older brother Richie died in a car accident, an event that profoundly shaped his emotional depth and drive. Turning pain into passion, Shelton moved to Nashville and eventually signed with Sony Music in 1997. Although his debut track was given to another artist and his label shut down just as he released his own single in 2001, fate had bigger plans. Warner Brothers picked up his song, Austin, which rocketed to #1 and launched his career. His next few albums saw mixed success, but It's Like the Baby and Some Beach solidified his place in country music. Behind the scenes, however, his personal life was less stable. He married his longtime girlfriend, Kaynette Williams, in 2003, but the marriage ended in 2006. Around the same time, Blake met rising star Miranda Lambert, and sparks flew. Their musical chemistry eventually evolved into a real-life romance, culminating in their 2011 wedding. Despite the public fascination with their union, the pressures of fame and personal loss, including the death of Blake's father, strained their relationship. During this time, Shelton also joined The Voice, where he brought his country roots to primetime television. His coaching success didn't hinder his musical output. Instead, he released a hit-filled album, Red River Blue, showcasing resilience in the face of personal grief. Still, cracks formed. Despite working on deeply emotional songs like Over You with Lambert, based on the loss of his brother, the couple couldn't escape the spotlight's pressure. In 2015, they confirmed their divorce, a shock to fans who had seen them as country royalty. Blake's career, however, remained robust. Even as old controversial tweets resurfaced in 2016 and he faced backlash, he apologized, owned his missteps, and continued evolving. Amid the turbulence, he was honored with an exhibit in the Country Music Hall of Fame and remained a dominant force on The Voice, mentoring winners and cementing his influence on the genre. That same year, a new chapter began when he connected with fellow coach Gwen Stefani. Gwen, raised in Fullerton, California, had a parallel trajectory of struggle and reinvention. Born in 1969 to a close-knit family, she was introduced to ska and alternative music by her brother Eric, who recruited her into the band No Doubt. Their early work floundered until the release of Tragic Kingdom in 1995, which catapulted Gwen into stardom with the smash hit Don't Speak. From there, she expanded her reach, collaborated with artists across genres, and eventually launching a successful solo career. While her music thrived, her personal life saw heartbreak. Her relationship with bandmate Tony Kanal ended, but inspired much of her emotional songwriting. In 2002, she married Gavin Rossdale Bush, and the couple had 3 children. However, after over a decade, Gwen filed for divorce in 2015, citing irreconcilable differences. That same year, while both reeling from divorces, Gwen and Blake found solace in each other on the set of The Voice. What began quietly blossomed into a public romance that fans embraced, especially when Blake credited Gwen with saving his life during a dark period. Their duet, Go Ahead and Break My Heart, in 2016 gave listeners a glimpse into their budding relationship, but it was Nobody But You and Happy Anywhere that truly captured their bond. Despite their public happiness, rumors swirled about potential trouble in paradise. Gwen later opened up about her insecurities, aging, self-worth, and fears of no longer being enough for Blake. These personal doubts bled into their relationship, creating internal battles they both had to confront. Yet, rather than fall apart, the couple grew closer. Blake, too, shared his concerns about fame's distorting lens and how hard it was to stay grounded amid public expectations. Their relationship, built on shared trauma and mutual understanding, was tested but not broken. In 2020, Blake proposed in a small chapel he built on his Oklahoma ranch, with Gwen's children present, a deeply intimate and symbolic gesture. The following year, they married there in a private ceremony, away from the chaos of Hollywood. Their love story, once a whispered rumor, had become a quiet affirmation of healing and second chances. Blake's heartfelt tribute during Gwen's Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony emphasizes admiration for her resilience and authenticity. He recalled their early encounters with fondness and respect, reinforcing the depth of their bond. Gwen, for her part, continued to thrive creatively and financially. From her music career and fashion brand LAMB to endorsements, voice acting in Trolls, and ventures in fragrances, she remained a dynamic force in entertainment. She also made savvy financial moves, owning luxury properties in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, and Oklahoma, collecting designer watches and cars, and safeguarding her assets with strategic insurance policies. Her third solo album, This Is What the Truth Feels Like, topped the Billboard 200, fueled by songs that chronicle her emotional recovery post-divorce. Singles like Used to Love You laid bare her pain, and fans responded with overwhelming support. Meanwhile, her work on The Voice helped launch new talent, reinforcing her role as a mentor. Her coaching win with Carter Rubin showcased not just her industry knowledge, but also her genuine care for others' growth. While their marriage has faced scrutiny, Gwen and Blake have consistently chosen honesty and transparency over showmanship. They've admitted to vulnerability, to fear, to needing each other not just for love, but for stability in an industry that often values image over substance. Blake, once known for rowdy humor and heartland hits, has evolved into a figure of emotional maturity, using both joy and hardship as creative fuel. Gwen has transitioned from ska queen to pop icon to business mogul, all while raising children and confronting societal expectations around beauty, femininity, and aging. Their story isn't just tabloid fodder. It's a chronicle of reinvention, grief, love, and the quiet power of finding someone who understands your wounds because they felt them too. Today, they stand not as a perfect couple, but as real people weathering storms together, their journey written in lyrics, tributes, and private moments far from the cameras. Whether their next chapter involves more music, family life, or something unexpected, one thing is clear. Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani didn't just find each other. They chose each other again and again in a world that rarely allows room for that kind of sincerity. Through public breakups, career comebacks, and emotional confessions, they've emerged as proof that love, when rooted in truth and built on mutual healing, can not only endure, it can thrive. Despite all their fame and fortune, the deeper story of Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani is one rarely told in full, a story woven not only by romance and resilience, but by immense personal transformation, identity crises, and moments of doubt that threaten to derail everything. Beneath the music, the marriage, and the media frenzy lies a pair of individuals shaped by past trauma and industry expectations, struggling to stay grounded in a world that rarely allows space for reflection. For Blake, the tragedy of losing his brother as a child left an invisible wound that never truly healed. It became the undercurrent of his songwriting and shaped how he viewed emotional vulnerability. While fans gravitated toward his down-home charm, few realize how often he used humor and laid-back wit as shields to guard his most painful memories. Every heartbreak he's endured, whether it was his parents' divorce, his first marriage ending in silence, or the unraveling of his second union, only reinforced that internal belief that closeness always comes with risk. Gwen, in her own right, faced an entirely different kind of emotional maze. As the frontwoman of No Doubt, she was thrust into the spotlight at a time when the industry had very little room for women with edge and emotion. She was expected to smile through the stress, to deliver hits while dodging sexist scrutiny, and to constantly redefine herself just to remain relevant. Add to that the pressure of navigating a male-dominated band, a crumbling romance with a fellow bandmate, and later a high-profile marriage to Gavin Rossdale that ended in tabloid betrayal, and what you get as a woman who has mastered reinvention not out of ambition, but out of necessity. Gwen's glamour is real, but so is the pain behind the eyeliner and platinum locks. What makes Blake and Gwen's love story so unique isn't the music or even the fame. It's that they found each other in a moment when both were emotionally shattered. The Voice, in many ways, was more than a career detour for Blake. It was a place of healing. And for Gwen, being on that show during her most vulnerable phase gave her the safety net she didn't know she needed. Their chemistry wasn't manufactured or rushed. It grew in whispers and sideways glances. Two people cautiously circling a possibility they weren't sure they deserved. And when they finally admitted their feelings, it wasn't some grand public reveal. It was awkward and hesitant, like all real beginnings are. In private, their connection was built less on shared career highs and more on late-night conversations about failed marriages, custody worries, and childhood trauma. Gwen, a mother of three, brought with her a complex life that didn't always fit the typical mold of Hollywood dating. But Blake didn't just accept that life. He embraced it. He stepped into the role of stepfather with a quiet grace, even confessing later in interviews that becoming a part of her children's lives made him reevaluate his own capacity for love. He never imagined himself as a parent, yet suddenly found meaning in the smallest things: football games, school pickups, and teaching the boys how to fish in Oklahoma. Behind the scenes, however, pressures continued to mount. Blake's Oklahoma roots often clashed with Gwen's fast-paced California lifestyle. For a time, they maintained dual residencies, living bi-coastal lives that required constant travel, compromise, and patience. Friends close to the couple have shared how difficult it was to blend two completely different worlds. There were cultural differences, political views, even music philosophies that didn't always align. And yet, the glue remained their mutual respect and a commitment to never pretend things were perfect. In an industry obsessed with curated perfection, Blake and Gwen dared to be real. Then came the pandemic, a global pause that forced everyone to confront their lives up close. For Gwen and Blake, isolation in Oklahoma became a defining chapter. Gone were the tour buses, red carpets, and TV tapings. In their place were home-cooked meals, shared gardening projects, and impromptu songwriting sessions in the kitchen. During that time, they wrote and released Happy Anywhere, a love song that captured the simplicity of joy found in presence rather than performance. It was in those quiet months that they decided to take the next step, and Blake proposed. Not on a stage, but in a small chapel he built himself, with Gwen's children and family surrounding them. The wedding that followed was intentionally modest, a deeply personal ceremony that centered on faith, family, and emotional authenticity. It wasn't about media coverage or celebrity endorsements. It was about healing, unity, and starting fresh. But even after the wedding, the rumors never quite stopped. When Gwen didn't wear her ring during a few public appearances, tabloids ran wild with speculation. Was there trouble in paradise? Were the blended family pressures becoming too much? And when Gwen released new songs with hints of emotional struggle, fans began reading between the lines, wondering whether her lyrics were autobiographical cries for help. What most didn't realize is that Gwen was simply doing what she's always done, turning insecurity into art. In interviews, she admitted to struggling with aging, beauty standards, and the nagging question of whether she was still enough for Blake. The world saw a style icon, but inside, Gwen was still that teenage girl from Fullerton who never quite felt pretty enough. And Blake, despite his own success, was immune to similar doubts. He spoke candidly about the fear of becoming irrelevant, of watching younger artists outpace him, and of the emotional toll that celebrity gossip can take on a relationship. These admissions revealed the cracks beneath the polish, but also the strength forged in their transparency. They chose therapy, communication, and faith over silence. When disagreement arose, and they did, both leaned into hard conversations rather than avoidance. And it was through those moments that their bond deepened. Instead of hiding from struggle, they let it reshape them. They refused to let tabloids write their narrative and instead wrote it themselves, day by day, in quiet decisions made behind closed doors. Professionally, both have continued to evolve. Blake shocked fans when he announced he would be leaving The Voice after over a decade. It wasn't a decision made lightly, but one rooted in a desire to reclaim time. Time for music, family, and self. Gwen, meanwhile, expanded her beauty empire and returned to the studio with renewed purpose. And while they haven't always collaborated musically since their marriage, they've often joked that the studio remains a sacred place for them, one where roles blur and the only goal is honesty. As parents, they've crafted a co-parenting approach with Gavin Rossdale that prioritizes stability for the children above all else. Blake, who once admitted he had no idea how to be a father, has quietly become a constant, cheering from the sidelines, helping with homework, and being the guy who shows up when it matters. Gwen, in turn, has expressed deep gratitude for how Blake stepped into her sons' lives with humility, never trying to replace their father, only to support their world. Yet even with all the progress they've made, there are still days when the weight of the spotlight grows heavy. Fame, as both Blake and Gwen know too well, is not just applause and admiration. It's a lens that magnifies every choice, every mistake, and every crack in the facade. There are moments when Gwen, standing backstage before a performance, questions whether people still care about what she has to say musically. She's spoken of how time moves differently for women in the music industry, how the expectation is to stay young, stylish, and constantly evolving or risk being forgotten. And while her fans adore her reinventions, what they don't see are the nights she lies awake wondering if she's become a caricature of her former self, or is she still that fearless girl who once belted heartbreak songs into smoky clubs. Blake, meanwhile, faces a different but no less intense form of pressure. He's been labeled America's country boy, a role he never asked for but has grown to embody. That label carries expectations. Stay humble, stay relatable, stay funny. But there are days when the jokes don't come easy, when the grief over his brother resurfaces without warning, or when he questions whether his music still resonates in a world where trends change overnight. He worries sometimes that his laid-back nature might be mistaken for apathy, that people don't see how deeply he cares about the things he doesn't always say aloud. Together, Blake and Gwen have learned to navigate these internal battles side by side. They've developed rituals of grounding, whether it's escaping the ranch in Oklahoma, attending church as a family, or simply turning off their phones and cooking dinner together. It's in these small, consistent acts that they find the strength to return to the public eye with grace. Their home, particularly the one Blake built with Gwen in mind, is less a mansion and more sanctuary. There's a garden Gwen tends with care, a music room where they create without deadlines, and a fireplace where they've had some of their deepest talks about past regrets, their hopes for the future, and how to raise boys in a world that often demands too much too soon. Their dynamic is built on balance. Gwen brings fire and vision. Blake offers calm and grounding. When she spirals with anxiety over performance or press coverage, he listens, holds space, and reminds her worth beyond the stage. When he retreats into silence after a difficult call or a personal loss, she doesn't push. She waits, gently nudging him back into light when he's ready. These are not dramatic gestures fit for headlines, but quiet moments of emotional labor, of choosing love over ego. Their life today isn't a fairy tale in the traditional sense. There are no castles or ball gowns, no dramatic public gestures. It's more real than that. It's about two people who have walked through fire, stumbled often, and yet still choose each other again and again. It's about coffee at dawn on a porch in Oklahoma, late night songwriting in a converted garage studio, laughing over burned dinners, crying through fears of fading relevance, and always circling back to the love that saved them both when they needed it most. Their story teaches us that sometimes healing doesn't look like a grand gesture. Sometimes it's simply a man and a woman daring to believe they're worthy of love again, even when the world has tried to convince them otherwise. And as they continue to defy industry odds, parenting pressures, and media scrutiny, they offer a blueprint for what modern love can look like: flawed, beautiful, raw, and resilient. If you strip away the award shows, the magazine covers, the chart toppers, and the interviews, what's left is the most human part of their story. Two artists who lost their footing, found each other in the debris, and decided that maybe, just maybe, they didn't have to have all the answers to make it work. Just a little faith, a lot of honesty, and a willingness to keep showing up. In the end, what truly sets Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani apart isn't their music, fashion, or fame. It's their courage to be seen as they are, imperfect, in love, and still writing their story out. If this behind-the-scenes look into their journey moved you, hit that like button. It really helps. Share your favorite Blake and Gwen moment in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold celebrity stories just like this one.